1, day 3. It's about nature. And we're going to be discussing our relationship to nature, what we love about nature, and we're going to be discussing in particular Rosie's bug phobia.
I hate ants.
So we're going to talk about ants in particular, actually. I know.
I might be itching a lot in this video.
So for every time we get a little itchy about talking about the ant, then we're going to talk about the ladybug too. Because ladybug, for some reason.
I had a pet ladybug. Her name was Red.
Yeah, it was cool.
Because she had no spots.
Just all red. Okay. So, welcome again. I'm Jen. This is
Rosie.
Hello. We're wearing our coordinated outfits today.
Yes.
Feeling a little.
She was wearing the dress and I'm like, I
little
have
in
a t-shirt
tune.
that looks like that.
Mm-hmm. And so we are doing week 1, day 3. And it's about nature.
Nature.
So, we
Oh, you have a nature notebook.
I do.
Yeah.
I have my
It's a
journal.
tree. Show that.
Has a beautiful tree image on it.
We gave that to you for like your birthday or something.
Yeah, and
Mother's Day.
now I'm really using it. This is my camp journal. Did you get your camp journal? Okay. We still have time. We always have time. Yeah, well, we've been trying to work on it together. So
yeah.
Okay, so when have you felt most connected to nature? So we put in a whole bunch of different images that we found.
That we connect to nature.
Right.
Connect to nature.
We're connecting with the idea of nature for now.
Yeah, like the earth.
As we sit in our nice air-conditioned house.
Yes.
With all of our electronic equipment and on our screens almost all day long.
Yep.
And I think that's what people think is like that once you're on technology, that it's the opposite of nature, right? Yeah. Either you're outside or you're inside. Yeah. Either you're on your screens or you're, getting fresh air or something. And I think over the years what I've tried to do is say they're not opposites, but that you do need a balance of your relationship to things, that it's hard to build good habits with things if you are stuck on it all the time. Bless you. Let's see. We have the earth, right? And this is a picture of the earth that we only had since space travel, because they were able to look from the moon and take a picture and you could see what it looks like.
People used to think the earth was flat.
Right? So people think, and so, some people still think the earth is flat, even if you have evidence and things like that. So there's lots of ways in which how people connect to the natural world can be full of errors in the way they think about it. It could be mythological. It could be scientific. It could be fantasy, right? So even science fiction is a version of connecting with nature, I think. Because it's about like what the world will be like in the future and how we'll be part of the world.
Like futuristic things.
Yeah, including space travel.
Yeah,
right? People think.
I think that most people, when they think of the future, they think of better technology. What if we take a turn and try to get away from technology and reconnect with the earth?
As part of the future, right? As that's what the future means. I think that's an excellent suggestion. Right. So
like the earth is nature and you see the sun
and the clouds.
But you were saying
and we tell stories about nature. We have stories that we've inherited, things that people have told us. Like if we see a picture of a dinosaur,
we think of the nature from way back.
Right, and we think of extinction. Yeah. Right? Mass extinctions. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later in our video today.
And the cactus can represent the desert.
The cactus can represent the desert. In like trees, take a really long time to grow and can live a really long life, like past human life. So they've been knocking down cactuses or cacti, I think, in order to make room for infrastructure. So they take down these big, beautiful...
But that's where owls live.
I know.
Owls make a hole in the cactus, and that's where they live.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Ooh, see, we're learning something every day. Again, what I think today we don't realize is that with something like a dinosaur, because they don't exist around us now, we forget that they are still part of nature, but now they're in the form of fossil fuels, because we actually dig up what is oil and gas. Those are fossilized and decomposed dinosaurs That's why when we went driving one day, we saw a bumper sticker that said, burn dinosaurs or something like that. Do you remember what it was? I don't remember what it was.
I don't know what you're talking about. Why?
Well, so gas and oil are the stuff of dinosaurs. You didn't know that?
What?
We have so much to learn.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what we're doing is we're taking a part of nature and tapping into it to create things that are then only for humans. Well, and that's the thing. How much are humans different than other things in nature, and how much are they like non-human nature? Right?
I also learned that on a show that there is possible that there is life because there's more Goldilocks zones in the galaxy.
What is a Goldilocks zone? Can you explain?
It's a place like we're in the Goldilocks zone. The Earth is in the Goldilocks zone. It's where it's a mix of
not too hot.
Yeah.
Not too cold.
And then scientists they connected the dots to the Goldilocks story of how the porridge was too cold or not too hot, and there is just the right one. We're in the Goldilocks zone.
I like that.
There's probably more Earth-like things in other Goldilocks zones in the Milky Way.
Well, most of the entire cosmos is not Goldilocks zone, right?
Pretty much.
As far as we know, and what little we can get from the data, which is actually still quite a bit, is there's lots of stuff in the universe that would still be Goldilocks zone, and even then, would it have life? Would it have the kind of life that we have? So there's a concept I'm going to introduce you to. It's called anthropocentrism, which is that nature is here for human beings to use and dispose of as they see fit. And so a lot of the idea of nature or connecting to nature in the future has to be non-anthropocentric, meaning we have to stop talking about the earth as if it's for us. And we have to stop talking about nature as if it's just for us.
Yeah, there's other animals like that dinosaur right there.
Right. So the world was for other things, not human.
Yeah.
That it's completely wonderful to understand and to study even, right? So one of the ways we've connected to dinosaurs is
we've found their fossils.
We found their fossils, right? And we learned about them, and we learned them when they existed, when they were extinct, when the mass extinction of dinosaurs happened. And we have another mass extinction that we have to talk about, right? The one that we might be in right now.
Also, there is a possibility that the dinosaurs, they weren't scaly, is what I learned on the show, I think.
They might have had feathers.
Yeah, they could have had feathers or whatever we have.
They say that like turkeys and vultures and a lot of the birds are still a significant genetic part dinosaur. So sometimes we look to birds to get a better insight into crocodiles. They still have some ancestral, DNA built into them, and manage some of that genetic information managed to be passed down outside of the extinction.
This is why nature is cool.
Nature is very cool. But also, we haven't done a good job of taking care of nature.
Yeah.
Like, we use dinosaurs not to study or to learn about extinction. We use dinosaurs because that's what gasoline is, that's what oil is, and natural gas, and all the stuff that we do to fuel our everyday life. If it's fossil fuels, it's actually dinosaurs. It's unsustainable because at some point we're going to use it all up, and then there will be no more. We cannot use that source indefinitely. But how much of our world is powered by fossil fuels? And you know what happens when we use fossil fuels? It creates pollution.
So that means dinosaurs created pollution.
No, we definitely created the pollution.
We did it. We did it mostly.
We did it. It's us. It's our fault.
Yeah.
Because the dinosaurs would have stayed in the ground as part of as part of the earth.
So aren't the bones supposed to disintegrate? So how did we find the fossils?
Well, because of the content of things like oil and gas. Much like any other organic matter, it burns really well and creates energy. And so what they discovered is oil that's in the ground, the fossil fuel, crude oil especially, when you dig deep into the earth, what you get are these pockets of decomposed matter, crude material, right? That gets refined and created into things that like fuel your car. And so human beings, through technology, have turned what should be just dirt in the earth, right? Just decomposed material, into something that fuels our economy, right? Because a lot of our economy depends on fossil fuel, use. But it creates a lot of pollution. It's a lot of energy.
That's why they're trying to create a gasoline that's like more it's environmental. It's like made out of leaves or something.
Yeah, well, that's and the biofuels. They'll talk about biofuels made out of veggie oil, right? So they're made out of vegetable oil.
I learned on a show that there's a racing car powered on chocolate.
That's interesting. And you know what else? I hate to say it, but a lot of our plastics are made out of the same stuff. Anytime you see something,
my plastic.
Right, that's part of the plastic straw debate that you were talking about. Is this
I
is
gave
made out
it
of
up
plastic?
when I was like 7. Well, the plastic straw.
It's very hard to give up plastic completely, but that's part of the reason why
every single thing you use is pretty much made out of plastic.
But that's why plastic doesn't
like your shoes.
But plastic does not biodegrade.
Yeah, it takes hundreds of years for it just to like disintegrate a little.
So this is our connection to nature. Very often, our connection to nature isn't about knowledge and learning and understanding ourselves. Very often, it's this connection about technology and how can we use it and what do we need it for the things we want right now. Bless you. Okay, so let's move on from the dinosaurs. We got more to talk about.
Apples, trees,
fruit and veg.
Did you know that trees, the leaves on trees, actually help us breathe?
Yes.
Yeah, they like do
forests are sometimes called the lungs of the earth, right? Yeah. Okay, so what else we got? Flowers and plants. We've had this debate
when
too.
When I think of nature, I honestly think of leaves.
Leaves, yeah, I get that. There's a good symbol to have in your mind is leaves. I think that when we think about nature, we've had a hard time. We're trying to get plants and plant and grow plants rather than like cut flowers, right? Because people cut flowers and those flowers are produced by other people and sometimes they're mass produced. And again, that use of fossil fuels that comes with something like wanting to connect to nature by having flowers.
But there's also fake flowers.
Yeah, fake flowers, wanting to have flowers. That's interesting way to connect to nature, but in some ways, it's going to be what we're going to call biophobic. It's really not that you want nature. You want stuff that just reminds you of nature, but you don't really want to like be with nature and connect.
Yeah.
Right? So we have also dirt.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't understand how important soil is for the environment. And I think we don't appreciate dirt. A lot of people say, it used to be a time where we would play with mud. Now we play with slime. And slime is like chemicals. Slime is like, it becomes garbage, right? Because you can't do it. You throw out slime when you're done with it, but you can never get enough dirt. Dirt is always good.
Yeah. Also, usually only time people do something with dirt on their time is for homework. Like make something good for the environment. They make a biodegradable. They put worms in the biodegradable thing where they turn the food waste into soil.
Compost?
Yeah, compost. You usually only do that for your science project.
Right. We don't compost here because there's so little room to compost. So we, some places, depending on where you live, they have composting, and it's really good to learn what counts as compost.
Did you know that it's illegal not to recycle in your home?
Right now it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that used to not be the case. I remember growing up and you just throw everything in garbage. Now, oh my God, could you imagine? That's like almost like offensive. The dirt and the idea that
some
dirt.
people don't like to play with dirt. Like a person on a show that I watch, she hates dirt.
Well, sometimes we really do think of like being dirty as disgusting, right? Yeah. Hygiene is different than being dirty. And again, dirtiness sometimes can be really good for your body. We live right now in a pandemic where everything is antibiotic, right? We have to like take antibacterial. Antibacterial, what happens if you use too much of that stuff?
It like, did you know a world without germs, it wouldn't look all shiny, you could eat stuff out the floor. It would actually look like the end of the world was going on, because there's two kinds of germs, good germs and bad germs. Bad germs you don't really want, but they actually bring you stuff like bread.
Yeah, like there's a lot of ways in which the world has to exist by microorganisms.
Yeah, you
those
have
microorganisms
to have both bad and good germs for the earth to be the way it is and not look like the world is
empty. And remember, this is also where, you know, when we think about microorganisms or really, really small parts of nature, sometimes we get a little creeped out, right?
Yeah.
It can feel a little creepy, but it also can be really cute.
Yeah.
So there's lots of ways in which we engage with nature through activities, right? Swimming and boating.
Yeah. You connect with nature you might go camping. The beach is a great way, like.
Oh, this summer's going to be tough because these are the things that we can't do where we would normally connect to nature during the summer because it's warm out. We go
now
to
the most you can connect to nature is to put your inflatable pool in the backyard. That's not even good for the environment.
Right. So, again, sometimes even going hiking and seeing a landscape, right?
Yeah,
where you're just standing in a spot that gives
really
you a beautiful view.
Yeah.
Oh, I love those moments when you're walking and then all of a sudden you stop and you look out onto like nature and there's very little other human beings and it feels so good. It's like a breath of fresh air, doesn't it?
But mountains can also be dangerous because it could be so high into the sky that the air is very thin.
Yeah, so people who do a lot of hiking have to be prepared and have to take good care of themselves, right? Because nature isn't always just cute and furry. It really can be a question of safety. So,
but trees.
What's Mommy's favorite part of a tree? Do you remember?
Stump. Wait, no, branch.
No, bark. I love bark.
Yeah.
Tree bark is so elaborate. It looks like skin.
Yeah. A certain kind of tree, the bark on it just peels off on its own, and the real tree inside just looks so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Colorful.
Mm. Hummingbird.
Yeah, we love all kinds of birds.
Yeah, hummingbirds are really cool. They can like flap their wings in like a matter of seconds. It's so cool. And you see how fast the wings go? It's
aerodynamic. Birds are aerodynamic. And how long human beings wanted to be like birds? We just wanted to fly.
Yeah.
We're not built like birds at all.
Yeah. We don't even have feathers.
And so what do? We make airplanes so we can fly. And what does it do? Uses fossil fuels. There we go. We're back at using the dinosaurs. Those poor dinosaurs.
Yeah. The sky,
the moon,
outer space.
Mm-hmm. Do you know that the ancient Greeks? There was one ancient Greek philosopher of nature who was able to predict eclipses. And I don't know about you, but if I don't look at a calendar, I have no idea when there's going to be an eclipse. I think I sleep through all of them if they're nighttime ones. And the daytime ones, I forget. I wouldn't even remember.
I only remember, I only learned the phases of the moon when I was in class.
So Thales studied the sky so much that he was able to predict eclipses. And I think that's really amazing because you really create that knowledge, right? When you study something or you watch it for so long, talk about a connection to nature, huh?
Yeah.
The stars.
They're just little tiny suns. Did you know that our sun is
not tiny at all?
Yeah, they're not tiny.
How about this? When you see a star, the light that you see, the star is already gone. The star has already extinguished itself. That's how far it's traveled.
Yeah. Did you know that our sun is like a small or medium size of a sun? And our sun is pretty big, but it's only like a small or a medium size of stars.
Yeah. Comparing it to the rest of the universe. the known universe.
Wait, I wonder why they don't call it the star, but they call it the sun. But the sun is just another star. Why don't they call it the star?
I think when we look at the night sky, that's another case of where we connect to nature, because we are always so filled with wonder. And philosophers have talked about that for a long time. It's like we see ourselves in relation to the rest of the universe when we look up at the sky, the night sky, because it's so vast, and we kind of realize how our place in the world, we can't be anthropocentric. We can't be the center of everything, right?
Yeah. I once watched a futuristic show where they, because the Earth was so polluted that they had to leave to another planet called Alpha Centauri.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. That's why sci-fi is interesting, because it always talks about how we've lost our connection to nature and we have to create technology to get away from it. But what I think it's what you said. We have to think about like the future of nature being something we become more connected to, not just something where the technology allows us to escape from our mistakes. All right. So we even, technology and genetics, these are all parts of nature. It's just we only know about and connect to nature in this way through the technology.
I have a very similar genetics to us, because we have a very similar baby hairs. She's that little thingy, and I have it too.
Power of genetics.
Yeah.
Also,
wait.
Matching outfits,
on the glasses,
matching
I look
people.
just like her, or very similar to. Genetics.
Yes. Wait. So we go back to genetics, science, and technology, even about food or energy or transportation or health. These are all things that have connections to nature, but sometimes those connections are by those people who have access to resources. So the rest of us have to depend on those scientists and those experts.
I have a question about the genetic sign. Mm-hmm. Is the genetic sign what genetics really look like, and how they discover that? If genetics are so tiny.
Well, it was a woman actually who discovered the shape of the DNA gene. The DNA shape is called a double helix. And so that double helix goes around, and it's like a ladder that somebody twisted into a piece of macaroni. But that's how it looks, right? And so we're hoping that there's other rich genetic possibilities all over the universe. Yeah. We just don't know about them yet. So that's also why science and technology can be really important in connecting us back to nature and not just making us exhaust the resources of the earth.
Also, you might see the yellow human person with the brain. Yeah.
Your brain is an amazing event of nature.
Yeah, because they say that we developed from monkeys to us.
Evolution.
Yes. So the brain had to develop, which nature did that for.
Which is interesting, because if you talk about brains, you talk about all the ways in which creatures have versions of brains or nervous systems, and they're so smart in the way they pick up on and understand other things.
On a show, that I learned that one side of your brain is your creativity, the other is like your seriousness. And the when you get older, your creativity starts to fade. When you're kids, you have more creative.
Why are you pointing at me? My creativity is starting to fade because I'm an old lady.
Well, yes, it's supposed to.
Thanks, honey.
Because kids rely on creativity for things they don't know how to explain.
Right. But then as you get older, you become more logical and you explain things in more what you call serious ways. Yeah. But the logic or the rational part, but it also takes away a lot of the fun out of life, which is why we have to have fun.
That's why that's why grown-ups miss when they're kids. Because then you have the fun time, you're free. You're free from work and whatever grown-ups do.
Yeah, rule stuff. Yeah. Anyway, so at some point we have a microscope, and we definitely are going to try to explore nature through the microscope. So that will be one of our sessions, maybe in the next few weeks.
We got to add that. Okay. The hand with the plant coming out of it. Yes. I think that means we connect to nature, or some kind of we mean nature or something.
In environmental philosophy, they talk about how we are the stewards of the earth.
What does stewards mean?
It means that we're the ones that have to take care of it, kind of like, you know how I take care of you?
Because we've created the pollution.
You can't do everything by yourself.
Kind of have to take that.
In order to grow, you do need support. And so part of that would be those who are in charge of cultivating that growth and to assist that growth. And so that plant, a seedling, can become a tree.
Yeah.
And very often human beings have been in charge of that, have been helping with that, and also interfering with it. We manipulate nature.
Yeah.
If you've ever heard about different dogs and the dog breeds.
Yeah.
So with dogs, I think when we do that, again, what we're doing is we're breaking with what is a principle of environmental philosophy, which is biodiversity. Very often when we are the stewards, we don't create more different kinds of things and accept more different kinds of things. You know what we do? We create what's called monocultures. And it means that mono is one. And what we do is we like lots of one thing from nature. We don't like the idea that nature produces like all kinds of stuff. Like when you go to the supermarket and you do see those apples, they all look shiny and the same. And gee, you won't eat any apples with a blemish on it, with a bruise or anything. So the idea that nature produces all kinds of things, fruits and vegetables and carrots. You know, there used to be dozens of different kinds of carrots. And now what do we know when we think of carrots? Only the one kind, our orange kind. But there are purple carrots.
Yeah.
There are.
Did you know that there was purple corn?
Yes.
Without food dye in it?
Yeah. It was like from nature. Now, when we see something purple, we have to assume maybe it was with food dye because we've taken out of nature as not being good stewards its biodiversity, and we've made it monocultures. So the future, when we talk about the future of nature, we have to talk about that future including biodiversity, more different kinds of things that nature produces as we would be good stewards. Let nature produce what it produces, not to interfere and manipulate it, so we get a lot of the same thing.
The different dog breeds, actually they did that for a king and queen who wanted a dog, but they were like wolf size. So they took a small dog plus another small dog. They fell in love, and then they took the smallest dogs, and then they kept doing that for centuries until they had a dog about the size of Chihuahua.
Again, human beings being right now in the Goldilocks zone as we are, and in environmental philosophy, we talk a lot about human beings' footprint, and we encourage people to think about how much impact do you have once you have walked away from a place, an environment or habitat. So if you've ever gone to like a camping site, they insist that you take all the things that you brought in with you out with you, and don't take anything that did not belong with you out of the campsite. So the idea that we leave footprints all the time, we leave behind garbage, we leave behind pollution. We want to minimize our footprint. And that is part of our responsibility to the environment because we only got one Earth.
Yeah, well, we do, yes.
So very questionable use of animals, and Rosie, being a vegetarian, does not want to eat them.
Yes.
I was vegetarian for a very long time too.
Yes.
And it's hard. It's hard to make those decisions about how we use animals. And so there's a lot of ways in which everybody has to think a little bit more about how they're connected to the natural world, including the way we eat and what kind of footprint that leaves. Some people have said one of the better alternatives is not necessarily to cut meat out altogether, but maybe reduce the number of times a week you eat meat.
Because there's
what kinds of meat you eat.
You know that in the shop, let's say you go to your nearby store and you came because there's a barbecue party and you want to bring some. There's an entire aisle, a very big aisle just for the meat that's I don't want. And I should mention, wrapped in plastic, the styrofoam underneath and then the plastic over.
So
also there's vegetarian meats that they come in boxes, which I think has something to do with the vegetarian and the environment.
All right, so there's lots of ways in which you can think about how food is part of your footprint and how you also connect to nature, even though it doesn't feel like it's a connection to nature. It's a way to kind of can continue to connect to nature. How are we doing it? How are we connected? And sometimes our food practices, what we eat, when we eat it, how much of it we eat, that too can be a way we can rethink about our connection to the nature in the future. Again, that would be our goal today, is that we're thinking about not the future through technology, but the future through our connection to nature.
Yeah. Okay. And other animals' connection to nature.
Right.
Because wait, in more futuristic movies, you don't see animals. I noticed that right now. You don't see animals like at all through. You see robots, you see technology, but you may see a few rats, but you don't really see you don't see animals.
You know, because of pollution and stuff like that, and I think where you can see or observe our footprint has been very heavy and very impactful on the nature is birdsong. They say that there was a time in which when you listen in the mornings, you'd hear all these different kinds of birds singing, and they're all chattering away, and there's so much. But as time has gone on, people who have sustained observation of nature, when you just sit and you listen and listen and listen over many years, kind of like what Thales did when he was watching the moon, and he was able to learn about eclipses, and he was able to predict the eclipses. So too with people who study birds, and what they've discovered is the bird song has lessened. In other words, there's less birds singing and less different kinds of bird songs that are out in nature. That's how we know we're in an event that animals, what used to be the diversity of animals, has reduced over time. The same thing we said about genetics. If we keep interfering with the natural world in ways that suit our interests, over time, then we create monocultures. Then there's less different kinds of carrots, there's less different kinds of birds. And that's what's minimized the bird song. So people who have studied this have noticed the bird song has minimized. We've taken away from the music of nature. And in a lot of ways, that means future people won't have those birds to enjoy that music, right?
Also,
they won't exist.
There's a lot of pollution has done a lot. Like the in the Arctic, the ice is starting to melt, so polar bears aren't pretty much having as much of a good habitat, so they're going under extinct. And the bees, since pollution, and they've
the blight, scientists can only do so much to discover why they're gone. Again, once the extinction happens, it happens to the point in which, one, who are the people watching to know how many bees there are? I don't keep track of the bees. Do you keep track of the bees? So the people who keep track start discovering these issues, and then they have to talk to each other to be able to say, are you having the same issue I am having? And then scientists have to figure out, how did this happen? And then by the time everybody's gathered the knowledge, it's too late. And to come up with a solution or to try to revive the bees becomes an effort of triage, like almost like emergency room, right? As if you've broken your leg and you need a cast. But unfortunately, the ecosystem doesn't work like that, right? You can't fix it. Once things go out of balance, it's like a sickness. It just falls apart really quickly.
The extinction of the polar bears and the bees and a lot more, that's only just on land.
I know.
Yeah.
You can imagine the marine extinctions that might be going on that we can't observe.
Yeah. Turtles, who think it's the jellyfish that are the plastic bags in the ocean and then eat the plastic bags. Yeah. There's also a photo on the internet somewhere of a turtle with a plastic straw in the turtle's nose.
Yeah. All right, so we've done a whole meditation on just the symbolic connections to nature and how we have to maybe rethink about the future of nature and our relationship to it. So here's our trivia bite number 3. This is how many mass extinctions has there been? Are we in one now?
I say we're in many mass extinctions.
There's a very specific number. So in Rosie's magazine that came this week, this is from Muse magazine, and there was a whole story about E.O. Wilson that actually inspired this discussion today. And so here is, they actually call him Ant-Man because of his study of ants in particular. And it's ants that makes Rosie particularly feel feel biophobic, a little itchy, scratchy.
Very itchy. They're tiny outside. I'm absolutely fine, but in my house.
And that's the thing. We just started to get sugar ants again, which are the little teeny ants, and they love to pick up whatever's on the floor, whatever little scraps or crumbs. Yeah, right?
I get itchy about ants.
Ladybug. So our trivia bite has to do with mass extinctions. Now, mass extinctions, we talked a little bit about that with the dinosaurs. Mass extinctions are when a huge amount of biodiversity is sloughed off and not to return. When we talk about extinctions are irreversible. You cannot, once that species is gone, it does not come back. Unless, again, we're going to manipulate genetics and the environment to recreate versions of animals that may have existed but don't anymore.
Like on a show that I watched and loved, scientists they recreated a dinosaur.
But the problem with that is that's what we think of when we think of the future of technology, especially technology about nature, is we're going to like bring back stuff that as if that's going to correct the damage we did. But the damage is still happening, right? I think what happens, you can recreate the polar bear once the polar bears are extinct, but you can't recreate their habitats. So once the habitat is gone, then it's literally like we're just making more caged animals, right?
I'm realizing that polar bears might be gone.
I think it's sad we've let it go this far. All right, so back to the ants. Let's talk a little bit about the ants.
Well, only because the dinosaur extinction wasn't their fault. It was a meteor.
No, extinctions have happened. This one, the event that we're in one now. See the question I asked? But the problem with the mass extinction is this one is what they call anthropogenic, meaning anthropos is the word for man, and anthropogenic, genesis, means we made it. So we're the ones that made this extinction. It's our fault. So what do we do? How do we think about the future? Our trivia bite, this would be something we would be discussing in our activity about what a mass extinction is, but also observations about nature. An observation about nature, nature stories can be really, really important to rebuild our connection so that we're not just talking about nature through technology, but nature as we create our own stories. We create our stories about nature. I'm going to give you a story. Can I tell you a story?
Sure.
It's about ants. And one day I was out and in the backyard and I saw a line of ants. Now, ants communicate with each other. They create trails. They send out like ants to go scope out new territory to either eat or to get material. They'll go and send a few out and they'll leave a little communication trail. So then other ants, when they do discover something that they want for the hive, they'll for the colony, what they'll do is they start following the trail. And so whenever you observe ants, they're always following, like looking like they're in a line or looking like a little pipeline of ants. They don't deviate too far from that because they're not exploring. Once they found something they want, they have to decide how they're going to get some of that stuff back into the colony. And so one day I see this long line of ants just going back and forth and back and forth. And you can see it almost like was like a highway, like traffic. And then I just sat there starting to watch it because it was just so fascinating. Not only that, they look so organized. And there they are just going back and forth, back and forth. But what I noticed was that as the ants would pass each other, they would literally like with either like some part of their body, their antenna, would check in with the other one going the other way. They would touch each other and then keep going. And then as they came back the other way, they would touch each other and then keep going. Like they were like, yo, what's up? And giving each other like a high five. And all of a sudden I had this like deep love for those ants who were like working. They were like working and they're like, hey, what's up, son? Yay, what's up? And only because I sat there and I kept watching. Because I was completely like confused and curious about these ants because they just seemed like they didn't care I was there. They did not care I existed. Right. They're like, whatever. You're on our turf now, right? And then they were going back, but I just thought it was so interesting. And the more I watched, the more it confirmed my observation that the ants, as part of their communication, were not only staying on this kind of like scent line or communication line, but that they were checking in with each other as they passed each other. I just think that was like a fascinating moment in which I connected to nature. And I learned something completely unexpected that now makes me, like, I see an ant and I just think, hey, yo, what's up, son? Like, now I have this happy association. Well, I'm not
to cry.
No, it just made me so joyful to learn something by myself about ants by just watching.
How big is an ant's brain? And is it in their head?
No, I don't. Well, that's the thing about any insects. The nervous system, the skeleton, the whole anatomy of it is so different than human beings. That's why human beings have such a strong reaction to insects. And that's why they tend to be phobic, because of how very different or alien insect anatomy is to human anatomy. And that can be a mistake, because there's a lot of ways in which they communicate like people communicate, right? They build communities like people. They seek out resources and exploit resources and can become a real pest like human beings. True. Yeah. So what do you think about that? You like my story? So why is it that you like ladybugs but not ants? Like, ladybugs, what's the difference?
Ants creepy and they steal your food, and ladybugs, they have a pretty back, they're cute, and they don't steal your food.
But they're both bugs.
Yeah, but one is cute, one is a thief.
Is it though?
No, not really.
No, not really. Not after my story.
To prove my case.
Yeah, no, I know. So there's lots of ways in which I think we can imagine reorganizing some new stories and making up some new stories. Also like just connecting to nature, you know, like learning from nature by watching it.
I also want to point out that, you know how when you're a little kid, bugs really fascinate you or scare you to death. But when you're like 4, you're
like dirt. We've talked a little bit about this.
I forgot to mention, I've seen an ant with wings twice.
Yes, ants can have, there's all different kinds of ants. Again, the biodiversity means that there are not the sugar ants in our house, these little teeny guys that like just are looking for something to eat, as opposed to the big carpenter ants that can like take down whole trees. Flying ants, there's all these different kinds of ants. They're different colors, just like we talked about with the carrots and the apples and the different ways in which there's so much we don't know about the diversity of things. That very often we think of an ant and we only think of one kind of ant, like the one we have pictured here.
Like, did you know that we've manipulated flowers like we've manipulated the dog species? Rose used to only have 5 petals.
Really?
5 or 7
Do you know
petals.
what the size of strawberries used to be in the wild? Strawberries were like little teeny things.
This big.
Yeah. You know, a lot of environmental philosophers have really argued, what do we do to the strawberry? It's done this big monster thing. It's almost like the size of a small apple.
Yeah.
And they don't taste very much. They're all water. They're not very flavorful.
Yeah. In fact, they're kind of sour.
I know. And if you've been watching the internet, you know what happens with strawberries? They say if you stick strawberries in salt water for 30 minutes, all kinds of stuff comes out of it.
I want to see that so bad.
Do we have to do that experiment?
Yes, we do.
It's like a TikTok thing right now. I don't know if that's a good idea, but we'll talk about it. I don't know if I really want to do that. Things I'd rather not know.
I want to.
As a friend of mine used to say, if it's organic, don't panic. Sometimes we have to not be afraid of nature. As creepy as it is, we just dive right in. Just dig into the dirt.
Let's do it.
Yes, let's do it. Especially because right now with a pandemic.
You do the cha-cha.
With a pandemic, honestly, there's a lot of ways in which a lot of fear about things we can't see and viruses and stuff can make us all very afraid to go outside, all very afraid of the natural world, when really we have to think about how we have created this very unfriendly relationship with nature. And we have to think about new, more friendly ways to relate to the natural world. Okay. So this was our chat today. This actually might be a two-parter, I'm not 100% sure, but so because there's so much that we talked about, and so much I have to like figure out what's the best thing to do. So your goal today will be to write a story where you connected with nature and tell it how it maybe was something that you would have been very afraid of, or maybe like thought was creepy and gross, and then suddenly by just that relationship, by that connection, suddenly it wasn't scary, it wasn't creepy. It might have been the first time you went swimming in the ocean. It something related to the trees or a park, or maybe it's something like even that you wouldn't normally think of as outside nature, but something that still had to do with nature. So one of the things we're also going to encourage is that you drink more water. Yes. Because I think we forget to keep ourselves hydrated, and our bodies are mostly water. And so in the summertime especially, but drink water that doesn't
use the plastic water bottles.
Yeah, just try to find ways to make the water delightful. Maybe a little lemon juice in it.
That's what I put in my water.
Right. Yeah. How my connection to nature exists sometimes in just, how the temperature of my room is, right? That the environment, when you are so used to air conditioning, it's really hot outside. When you get used to being hot outside, it's actually quite nice. It's good to sweat. It's good to like be out and about.
Good to sweat?
Yeah. Your body is processing the water. Healthy.
Did you?
Sometimes can be healthy. Sometimes it can be really healthy. To remember that your body is its own ecosystem.
Wait, did you know that honey is technically bee barf?
Yes, I did know that. But who wouldn't live without honey?
I hate honey. Also, you're allergic to honey.
It's true. But that doesn't mean that's true for everybody. But honey is, and honey carries antibiotic properties, that when you're sick, and people suggest that you have honey, because the bee barf also takes in a lot of the properties of the natural environment and can give you some resistance to whatever bug you have. It does not help with this virus pandemic, but in terms of taking good care of yourself, part of what you eat is part of you connecting with nature. So it's a good way to think about your connection to nature. I'm not saying you have to eat honey. I'm not saying that. Drinking a little more water, that's if that's something that you can do.
Definitely do that.
And ask the people around you about the nature relationships they have. What are they phobic of? What did they found creepy and crawly at one time and learned how to be comfortable with later? Again, hope you had fun today. Hopefully this was interesting to you, and we'll